Delhi. Delhi was much worse.
So it's 开始到我的妈的。That
I speak to young women, Chinese and foreigners at any time. And but they close, and since last year, they really closed the door. Completely. It was much better than last year, and then suddenly they closed the Sorry. But like, yeah, but
This is our civilization-based package.
what is the? What is that? What's coming out?
started the program. No, it's starting the program.
And what's first?
Speech from Youth Congress. Yeah.
They light the candles
Yeah.
right now.
Yes, not now.
No, no.
You haven't the program?
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey. All press have to go on the right or left side, not in the middle, because we are making fire here. Look.
가두진 좁아들라 현재 상마들인데 폐부대 배가우 중 토체나 수행이 And after that we will sing the Tibetan national anthem. J'aimerais vous souhaiter la bienvenue à la célébration das Mandala, was das Mendete-Sum überreicht an das Bildnis von Benje Rinpoche sowie Kataks. Wir beginnen jetzt mit der Weihrauchopfergabe. An der Mimantobe gi Tortukaje, Dina Shimbedun Yapyo Tobe, Tortukagi Tortuzugi, an der Benjemuchi Kubal Jeda, Pure Gugap an der Ranangiori. Gesi France, ne Bewe Mimantobe gi Tortut Wachun Amrish Jövrishina.
네, 절로 단선 주신다다 인드로.
안다 캐는 붙이기 종가 둘진 좁아들 땜징 캐제 안다 양라 좁아나야래
Kira dendi ogi puri taku jeb deus seje. Dendi seje nganzu ki ngome ki mira mango ji dendi ogi puri chigol taku jeb chete chapsil thona majeb kengi ana nganzu jeb jola le de ar. Nganzu rama rangze gegap logyul sibra ji na thakba do nganzu shengge jogi ongba shego aj kharese na. Nganzu thande ki tujola nganzu loje nga sora ji na ngap chung egu ki yayo le ya gejo chre. Ding di jan ta thanda jambulin khasa khale ya 조에 롭종 고갑라에 이게 까진디 거숭다 여름 문제 중그래 이나 로아 진짜는 아주 단대 뒤줄라야 다 잡죠 차브래 오네 뒤조 냥 차부지 갈 게브래 소데 감보래 소소 룽바요 마레 가와치미네 남달레다 사잠레다 강에 아주 간다 강에 지날 훈데 딘데 뒤조 지 딘데 내다지 타 토래 아주 내가 지고래 예메네 게랍 로주그날다 쉔게 망고지 라브라 친 점불이 개갑 창망 그 로주모 이나 네 삼바 nganzu jinne 내당 토네 소데 감모 인지를 니네 ngaranzu ngone phoshung da mima 그 게랍다 로주그날 오네 직 튼주체 다 신득 계획이 되바 요바이나 다 뒤조 약수제 레섬도 잠불린 로주날 미케다체 년다체 전단체와 뒤조 가도 총고할 때 강에 여배 가다 아니 미디기 체제 뜻도이나 소소 계획다 미리디 둘치제 콤바 두메체베나 어디도잖아 아니 미디기 깨다샤고래 제제샤고래 로주 사바소고래 디기 로주디 아니 미디다 계획 미랍 디기 태제 마음발에네 로통다 방구치면에 만중에만 미디 디 제브르세제 아니 맞는다 송제가 간다 매운남수 난다 아니 제제장 미디 아니 미랍 망고 대여바지 차도고래 제가 단대가 뒤중 원래 약차고래 이메일에 땅안주 순게 망고지 나 중구요 코 중구요 알롭종요 다 락질 자신나 받다 토림로브라다 죽라로브라다 락게 두시야 찌제샤 다 찌버 디기 투메서버지 다 팬토버지 세르가로 마존에 겹사데 페버지 넘버지 거래 제가 딘다 인디잖아 뒤주 딜이야 소소기 원에 가서 점버디 다 버치백 딩제 나려 그 개갑도 미망기 체도 아니 컴바 듬부 체체 셴데 표이나 딜레기 셴데 체지 원에 다 추스네 다가라 레성도 단내 뒤줘라 간저 개갑다 미리 교쇼 뒤줘달래 딜레 하죠 번째 요 말을 성도 제가 대창매게 원고 제고 뒤주 차대사 다 숨바디
L'affaire va prendre fin, mais ce qui va continuer par contre, c'est la lutte pour la libération du Tibet. Aujourd'hui, comment ne pas parler d'émotion? Is the Communist Party which makes policy from Beijing and includes few Tibetans. when Tibetans are in possession of minimal local authority of Chinese into Tibet. Any lasting solution to the Tibet question must therefore address Tibet's status. Central Tibet was a de facto independent state under the Dalai Lama, conducting its own domestic and foreign affairs when Chinese troops invaded. The ICJ in its report found Tibetans to be a people under aligned subjugation, entitled to, but in practice denied, the right to self-determination. Tibetans should now be able to freely determine their political status, be it full independence, a continuation of Tibet's current status, or genuine autonomy within China as proposed by the Dalai Lama. Those eligible to vote would be all persons resident in Tibet, that is, all contiguous territories in which ethnic Tibetan historically constitute a majority before 1950, and their descendants, including Tibetan refugees and their descendants, but not post-1950 Chinese settlers. That when a small nation or a small people fell into the grip of a major power, no one could ever raise their case here. That once they were a subject nation, they must always.
Erlauben Sie mir, in Deutsch zu sprechen, in meiner Muttersprache, denn ich weiß, dass auch für Sie, für viele von Ihnen Deutsch fast zur zweiten Muttersprache geworden ist. Wir sind heute zusammengekommen, um den 10. Geburtstag des 11. Panchen Lama zu feiern, des Kindes, das weltweit der jüngste Gefangene aus Gewissensgründen ist. Heute gelten ihm besonders unsere guten Gedanken, unsere Hinwendung, unsere Glückwünsche, aber wir sind auch um Sorge um seine Gesundheit und um sein Wohlergehen. Möge die Sonne, die uns heute hier so schön erwärmt, auch ihn in seiner Gefangenschaft Licht bringen und seine Zellen erwärmen. An diesem denkwürdigen Ort aber auch versammelt, um unseren Protest, unsere Sorge und unsere Trauer, aber auch unsere Forderungen und unsere nicht nachlassende Zuversicht der Öffentlichkeit und den hier in Genf anwesenden Mitgliedern der UNO-Menschenrechtsstaaten immer mehr einbüßt. Wir fordern die UNO-Menschenrechtskommission deshalb auf, endlich die notwendigen Reformen anzupacken und durchzuführen, um die wichtigsten Grundaufgaben wieder mit neuer Glaubwürdigkeit, Überzeugung und mit vollem Einsatz wahrnehmen zu können. Es ist jetzt Zeit, die Lösungen für Tibet zu suchen, nicht erst, wenn, wie im Fall von Kosovo, die Bomben alles zerstören. Wir verlangen die Unterstützung für die Freilassung all der zahlreichen politischen Gefangenen in Tibet, welche oft schwerster Misshandlung und Folter ausgesetzt sind. Wir verlangen natürlich die Freilassung des 11. Panchen Lama, wessen Geburtstag wir heute feiern. Ohne ihn, und wir alle sind in tiefer Sorge, weil wir nicht wissen, unter welchen Umständen er und seine Familie leben muss und welche Art von Erziehung und Bildung er genießt. Unsere Sympathien, unsere guten Gedanken und die Gebete mögen ihm Kraft und Freude bringen. Unser eindringlicher Appell richtet sich jedoch an die UNO-Menschenrechtskommission und an die UNO-Hochkommissarin für Menschenrechte, Frau Robinson, bei der chinesischen Regierung mit Nachdruck die Erlaubnis für ein Treffen zwischen einer Delegation des Komitees für die Rechte des Kindes und dem 11. Panchen Lama einzufordern. Denn die Verschleppung dieses Kindes durch die chinesische Führung ist eine Ungeheuerlichkeit. Mit einem Vorstoß, unterstützt von den Mitgliedern aller politischen Parteien unseres Parlaments, habe ich deshalb den Bundesrat in der vergangenen Woche aufgefordert, ihre Forderungen hier ebenfalls zu unterstützen und sich selbst auch direkt bei der chinesischen Regierung für die Freilassung des Panchen Lama einzusetzen. Trotz der unglaublichen Arroganz, welche der chinesische Staatspräsident Jiang Zemin bei seinem kürzlichen Staatsbesuch in der Schweiz gegenüber unserem Bundesrat gezeigt hat, soll der begonnene Dialog über die Menschenrechte mit China hartnäckig und unerschrocken fortgeführt werden. China muss auch endlich bereit sein, in einen fairen Dialog ohne Vorbedingungen mit der tibetischen Exilregierung einzutreten. Und auch wir müssen offen sein für verschiedene Lösungsmöglichkeiten. Wir dürfen uns durch die vorgetäuschte Machtdemonstration des chinesischen Staatspräsidenten nicht einschüchtern oder gar blenden lassen. Denn seine Unfähigkeit, sich der friedlichen Tibet-Demonstration auf dem Bundesplatz und den Appell für einen Tibet-Dialog zu stellen, kommt schon eher einer großen Schwäche gleich. So bin ich überzeugt, dass auch China in der heute noch gewaltsam unterdrückten demokratische Wandel nicht mehr lange aufzuhalten sein wird. Es ist nun unser aller große gemeinsame Verantwortung, unseren Protest und unsere Dialogbereitschaft auch in Zukunft mit Hartnäckigkeit fortzusetzen. Ich möchte den verschiedenen Tibet-Organisationen hier in der Schweiz für die gute Zusammenarbeit danken, namentlich auch Nawang Gangsongtang, welcher ja Mitglied hier in der Schweiz, aber auch des tibetischen Exilparlamentes ist. Wir müssen unsere Zusammenarbeit
is yeg soon tabes ingsa chobi pora ngale dashin geba didi nobiri yene suke tabe usa kanden pora ngale dashin gebas. The song I'm going to sing is a song, a classical song in praise of the seat of Panchen Lama and the relationship between Panchen Lama and the Dalai Lama. Can you hear the instrument?
I was just in Dharamsala, and there was a very moving moment where I was leaving the teachings one day, and a Tibetan woman came up to me, and she didn't speak any English, but she gave me a note. And it was a note that had been smuggled out of Lhasa, and it was in kind of pidgin English. And it said, "Please help us, can't help ourselves. They're eating the marrow of our bones. They're eating the marrow of our bones." And I felt again this sense of urgency. They're eating the marrow of our bones now, right now. And it gave me a lot of energy to continue this work, which sometimes is obviously very frustrating for all of us. We're fighting a very, very strong, a very powerful enemy. And basic ignorance in this case, which is the real enemy, is personified in the Communist Chinese government. Now, we've just seen it this week, where they're able to manipulate the vote, the Human Rights Commission. Again, surprise. counter to the charter, counter to the feeling, counter to the word in the heart of the United Nations and the Human Rights Commission, the Chinese again were able to manipulate the vote. Shame on the Commission, shame on the UN for allowing this.
Wow.
I think one of the other powerful things we're dealing with here is this image of Panchen Rinpoche. And I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyhow. So few of us have ever heard the words of the first Panchen Lama, but I was looking around in my prayer books, and the only one I had with me that was words of the Panchen Lama is Lama Chupa. This is a tantric text. I probably shouldn't be reading it publicly, but parts of this I will read. And I think it personifies Panchen Rinpoche, Panchen Lama, this little boy who was kidnapped at 6 years old, is now 10. The Chinese finally admitted that they took him, but will not tell us where he's hidden, or even if he's alive. Very dangerous 10-year-old boy. This very dangerous 10-year-old boy wrote this in a previous incarnation that I believe was the 17th century. We're trying to figure out exactly when the first Panchen Lama was. We think the 17th century. This is from the middle of the Lama Chupa. There is no difference between ourselves and other. None of us wishes even the slightest sufferings, nor is even content with the happiness we have. Realizing this, we seek your blessings that we may enhance the bliss and joy of others. This chronic disease of cherishing ourselves is the cause giving rise to our unsought suffering. Perceiving this, we seek your blessings to blame, begrudge, and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness. The mind that cherishes all mother sentient beings and would secure them in bliss is the gateway leading to infinite virtue. Seeing this, we seek your blessings to cherish these beings more than our lives, even should they rise up as our enemies. In brief, infantile beings labor only for their own end, while Buddhas work solely for the welfare of others, with a mind understanding the distinctions between the failings of one and the advantages of the other. We seek your blessings to enable us to equalize and exchange ourselves for others. Should even the myriad beings of the three realms, without exception, become angry at us, humiliate, criticize, threaten, torture, or even kill us, we seek your blessings to complete the perfection of patience, not to be distraught, but to work for their benefit in response to their harm. This is what the Chinese are afraid of. Such love, such compassion, embodied in a 10-year-old boy now, who wrote these words 250 years ago and still embodies them. We have to keep reaching out to our Chinese friends so that they see this is this enemy that they've been told. This is the barbarian Tibetans. I want to destroy them. When I look around these faces here, these faces so gentle and so peaceful and so loving, I feel so confident that if the Chinese were ever to engage the Tibetans in any real level, they would feel our common humanity so deeply that much of this madness would go away, like smoke, like the illusion that it really is. There's another thing that I'd like to read, and then I'll finish up because I know we've been here a long time today. And this is something that I read when I was in Washington yesterday. Very, very moving piece that was written by Secretary General Kofi Annan. And this was actually delivered to the Commission on Human Rights on April 7th, at the beginning of the session. Now when I read this, I'll read just portions of this that are relevant. If you could think about Tibet. It is a special pleasure for me, this is the Secretary General speaking, special pleasure for me to join you for this country's last session, the century's last session of the Commission on Human Rights. In any year, your work to enhance combating violations of human rights and establishing norms to protect them makes history and helps save lives. This year, however, as we look to a new century of human rights and regrettably of new threats to those rights, I salute your determination to ensure a firm foundation for the rights of future generations. As Secretary General of the United Nations, I have made human rights a priority in every program the United Nations launches and in every mission we embark upon. I have done so because the promotion and defense of human rights is at the heart of every aspect of our work and every article of our charter. Above all, and I underline this, above all, I believe human rights are at the core of our sacred bond with the peoples of the United Nations. The important word there, I think, is sacred. Now, this bond is not because it was bought, it's not because there were power structures that made it happen. It's sacred. It's beyond all these things. It's of the absolute universe of human emotion and aspiration. It's a sacred bond. Perhaps more than any other aspect of our work, the struggle for human rights resonates with our global constituency and is deeply relevant to the lives of those most in need. The tortured, the oppressed, the silenced, the victims of ethnic cleansing and injustice. If in fact, in the face of such abuses, we do not speak up and speak out, if we do not act in defense of human rights and advocate their lasting universality, how will we answer that global constituency? Will we say that rights are relative, or that whatever happens within borders shall be no concern to an organization of sovereign states? No, we will not, and we cannot. For at the end of the 20th century, one thing is clear: a United Nations that will not stand up for human rights is a United Nations that cannot stand up for itself. On the eve of a new millennium, we know where our mission for human rights begins and ends, with the individual and his or her universal and inalienable rights to speak, to act, to grow, to learn, and to live according to his or her own consciousness. The Commission on Human Rights can claim with pride to have been an architect of the international structure of rights that we have today. From this commission came the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the binding treaties which, taken together, have created an international code of human rights. That is a code that the Chinese break every single day. Recognizing that human rights are interrelated, indivisible, and interdependent, it sounds like a Dharma talk, doesn't it? Interrelated, indivisible, interdependent, you have helped ensure that the implementation of social and economic rights goes hand in hand with political and civil rights. And in the important work of implementing the Convention on Rights of the Child, whose 10th anniversary we will commemorate this year, you have reaffirmed the principles that human rights begin at birth, but apparently not with the Panchen Lama. Gross and shocking violations of human rights continue daily around the world, offending the global conscience, outraging all people of goodwill, and undermining our deepest sense of shared humanity. If we cannot respond to such acts, if we cannot step in where the suffering is greatest, then the foundations that we lay elsewhere will tumble beneath the weight of those violations. The achievements of the last 50 years are rooted in the universal acceptance of those rights enumerated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in the equally universal abhorrence of practices for which there can be no excuse in any culture under any circumstances. Who in this hall or anywhere around the world would deny the wickedness of torture? Now, we have a man here who spent 22 years in prison being tortured. He still has a bullet in his back to show for it. But this man can't speak in the UN. He doesn't have a voice in the UN. Who would justify the unspeakable practice of ethnic cleansing? Who would defend slavery or stand in support of racial, sexual, or religious discriminations? Who would advocate human rights or fundamental freedoms of its people? Human rights and fundamental freedoms are sacred. This hope for humanity may have come too late for the desperate thousands who have been forcibly expelled from their homes in Kosovo, and think Tibet in this context, or for the hundreds, if not thousands, and in the case of the Tibetans, the perhaps 1 million to 1.5 million who have been murdered simply for who they are. But will not have come too late for the United Nations if it emboldens us to enter a new century with a renewed commitment to protecting the rights of every man, woman, and child, Panchen Rinpoche, regardless of ethnic, national, and religious belonging. No government has the right to hide behind national sovereignty in order to violate the human rights or fundamental freedoms of its peoples. Human rights and fundamental freedoms are
Han Chinese people who
我们必须团结起来。我们所有这些被压迫者，我们所有这些善良的人民，必须团结起来，才能战胜那些罪恶的压迫者。
If all of the victims of this oppressive regime don't come together and work together, then we'll never be able to conquer this terribly repressive regime.
我们都是普通的老百姓，我们都是些善良的人。有些人说你们都是羊，你们天生就是受欺负的。
We're all ordinary people. We're all good people, and we're like lambs. We've all been suffering for many years.
但是我要说，我们即使是羊，我们也长着犄角，我们也要反抗，我们也要争取自己的权利和自由。
But even though we've been victims, we also have to learn to defend ourselves, to step forward and fight for our own rights.
帐篷里的这3位朋友就是我们的犄角。
The three men who are underneath the tent right now represent our ability to fight back.
他们很勇敢地站在前面，不但用自己的时间、自己的金钱、自己的精力，而且也要用自己的生命来证明我们的坚定的信念。
They've been given to us as a gift from heaven, but we must learn to protect them. We must learn to stand up for them.
过去我们曾经犯了错误，我们疏忽了，不但是藏族人民，而且是汉族人民、蒙古人民和新疆的人民都丧失了自己的自由。
50 years ago, we made a grievous mistake. Not only Tibetans, but Han Chinese and Mongolians and Uyghurs. We gave up our freedom.
但是现在我们从失败、从错误中学会了，我们要争取自己的自由。所以现在我们团结起来以后，我们的力量就变得越来越大。
But we've learned our lesson well, and we've learned that we have to, because there's still a next time, and there's a time after that. And in addition to the High Commission on Human Rights, we still have other tools and other tactics to continue our work, so that time and time again, if we continue to fight, we'll definitely win.
今天我们大家聚集在这儿，有很多的朋友在这儿，我们是为了纪念小班禅喇嘛的生日。
Today,
many friends have come together to celebrate and commemorate the.
前几天我们和新疆的蒙古的朋友在一起也讨论过这个问题。我们觉得我们应该一起工作，我们大家都要做出自己的努力，来为了小班禅喇嘛恢复他的自由，为了他能够和我们大家在一起自由的生活而努力。
A few days ago, I met with representatives of the.
And with the official agreement with the Board of the Lithuanian Parliament. All like-minded people.
Lietuvos parlamentinės ryšių su Tibetu grupės vardu.